Hello, this is Matthew Robert Payne, and this is Tolu Sarah Johnson. This is chapter 3 in Reframe Heaven.
Thank you. Chapter 3. This is where theology simplified what is complex, reducing heaven to clouds, mansions, and stillness. You know, a lot of us, if we're sincere to ourselves, heaven that was supposed to be so profound, church made it too simple, but at the same time, difficult to get in. Not because heaven is simple, but because it was easier to explain it that way to us. So over time, what is vast, layered, and alive, which I'm coming to understand in this past 2.5 years, was reduced to something you could quickly imagine, but never truly understand, which is sad because if you think about it, this is what many of us were taught to picture. Like for me growing up, it was about clouds, white robes, golden straight, big mansions, endless stillness. And when you read books like Revealing Heaven by Kerr, that's all you see. It's all about, oh, your mansion is so big. They build your house to your taste. You got waterfalls coming from your garden. So it became like they sell it to you like a quiet place, a resting place, a finished place, not moving, not developing, not evolving, just there. I remember speaking to a lady I knew who lost her husband, and I was trying to encourage her. You could speak to your husband, and of course, he's still your husband. Even when you get to heaven, you could still live together. And no, 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 no. Nobody lives in heaven together. You just stay in this cloud and you just worship God all the way. And because that's how the church has sold it. That's how they understood the heaven from the Bible. But when you look at it, the Bible did not really delve deeper into heaven. So a lot of our assumptions, even about what heaven is not true. And if you're honest, that version of heaven never quite felt real to you. To me, it never felt real. It felt distant. It was static. It was almost lifeless. A place you're meant to want but struggle to connect to. Because deep down, you were created for movement, for growth, for interaction, for purpose. That's how God created us. And yet, heaven was described as if all of that ends there. Sleep well, rest in peace, especially when somebody dies. Rest in peace. I don't know what that means. Do you just sit in heaven and just rest in peace, or you rest in peace in the grave? There's so many things that we say that just does not make sense. And Papa said it so many times. Tolu, why would I create a place for you that removes everything that makes you alive? And over time, that question has shifted something in me because I now realize if heaven removes purpose, removes growth, removes interaction, then it doesn't feel like life. It feels like pause. It feels like death. And heaven is not like that. But of course, our theology tried to help. But in trying to explain heaven, it reduced it. They took glimpses like Kerr and turned them into definitions. They took symbols and turned them into structures, fragments, and presented them as the whole picture. Imagine just a fragment. And then they tell you that's the whole picture. That's what heaven is. Bible only mentions heavens in a very scanty way, and those fragments people hold on to it, and instead of making the Bible as a stepping stone where you start a real relationship with God, and God can take you on a journey of heaven and he can show him who he is himself, we're just happy to hang on to the fragments. And you even argue foolishly, stupidly, like a fool, and holding on to your fragment and thinking your fragment is all that it is. And you get to heaven, you're still a fool. You're still holding on to your fragments. You don't want to explore what heaven is all about. Heaven is all about God. God says the best reward that you can have is possessing me. So why do you hold on to the fragments of heaven, having fun, going for pizza, going, all of those things? you cannot develop yourself, so you still carry on with your idea of what heaven is. You've limited, you've kind of minimized it to just about you. And of course, yes, cloud was never the point. Clouds were imagery, not what heaven is all about. Mansions were symbolic, but not the only reality. Stillness, yes, was a movement, but not the nature of heaven. But over time, these things became the full description, and everything else was lost. Because heaven is not static. That's what I've come to know. It's not empty. It's not one dimensional. It is structured, layered, active, evolving. It's evolving every day. The things that we're going to speak about heaven in this book might have evolved in future, but at least it gives you an idea what heaven is and what God expects from you, and how you can use that as a starting point to develop your own relationship with God. And most importantly, heaven is deeply, deeply relational. That's what I've come to know. So please stop simplifying heaven in a way that disqualifies it, in a way that minimizes it. Because a simplified heaven is easier to control, it's easier to teach, it's easier to repeat, it's easier to believe, but not necessarily easier to experience. So which one do you want to do? Do you just want to be teaching it without never experiencing it? And that's why you religious Christians, you cannot tell me that God is something, because that's what you've been taught. We do videos, we write books, you challenge our assumptions of heaven, but you can go to him and ask him and clarify as well. You don't need to continue to push your responsibility of growing with God to be placing that responsibility on a third party. My church did not say that. The Bible did not say that. Why don't you speak to God yourself? How can you tell me that if I read a biography about Steve Jobs, I need to trust that biography over speaking to him himself? Christian, that's how you've turned the Bible to. The Bible is not just, is that does not contain who God is. It can give you a fragment of a ball. You need to have a proper relationship with him. So heaven is not one scene, it is not one environment, it's not one experience for everyone. It is dynamic, it is structured, it is layered in ways you were never shown. And this is where you begin to release that flat picture, the static imagination that you have, the overly simplified version you have, and you start to allow a bigger reality to form, because heaven is not small. It is not a single image you can hold in your mind. It's not. It is not a simple place you can fully describe. It is far more expansive than what you were given. So I'll pass you over to Matthew.
So, what heaven do you want to go to? Do you want to go to a heaven, the streets are lined with gold? It says that in the Bible. Do you want to go to a heaven where all you do each day is go into the throne room and worship? Do you want to go to a heaven where you lay on a cloud and blow a trumpet with angels? Do you want to go to a heaven where you can't have a relationship with your wife that you've known for 50 years? You can't sleep in the same bed as her. You'll just be friends for the rest of your life. You'll know that she used to be your wife, but you can't be with her now because of one Bible verse in the Bible that's misunderstood. Do you want to go to a heaven that the Bible explains, or do you want to go to a heaven that's it's always moving, always changing, always developing, always getting better? Do you want to go to a heaven that you can be busy each day doing a job that you've always wanted to do in your life? Would you like to go to a heaven that you always wanted to act, or you always wanted to sing, or you always wanted to perform in musicals, but you never get the chance? Do you want to go to a heaven where your dreams can come true? A heaven where Ephesians 3:20, and he can do exceedingly abundantly more than you can ask or think. Do you think heaven would be exceedingly and abundantly more than you can ask or think? Or does it have to fit into a clever program, a clever diagram, a clever document that your pastor has drawn up? who do you want to trust? Who do you want to trust for your information about heaven? Someone teaching on heaven, writing a book from all the references in the Bible, or someone who actually lives there? Someone like
Mm.
Princess Diana that's been there for over 20 years. She could do this whole book on heaven. This book's going to have 40 chapters. She could describe each of the 40 chapters here because she's lived there for 20 years. How would you like to listen
Mm.
to John Lennon and him explain what heaven's like? He's been there for 42 years. Do you think he'd know what his town is like? Would you, if you're going to go to New York, would you be like to be shown around New York by someone who's just read about it in a book? Or would you like to meet a local that's been there for 40 years? Who would you trust to show you around New York, all the favourite restaurants and famous places and the famous art galleries? Would you trust someone who's been living there for 40 years? Or would you trust someone who's read about New York in a book, in a tourist book? That the Bible is just like a tourist book. It's not
Mm.
written by people who've been there for 40 years.
Oh,
And so, today, as we move through these chapters and as we go through each chapters, we're going to finish each chapter with a saint out of the Bible, and they're going to speak into each of the chapters. But don't uh, beg you, don't uh, water down your understanding of heaven. The understanding of heaven preached in the church that I've heard for 50 years is a watered down version of heaven. It's
mm.
it's a version of heaven that's found in a tourist book. It's not a version of heaven that's understood by someone who's lived and breathed and worked there for 42 years. So in this chapter in heaven, we're going to have John Lennon uh, speak into this subject, if that's okay with you, Tolu.
And what have I got to say?
No, we can have someone else.
I've got someone else in mind, Matthew.
Radio, sorry,
Prince Philip.
Prince Philip. So what's your question for him?
So my question is, why do theology simplify what is complex when it comes to heaven?
Because people only speak on what they know, and
Hmm.
so many people only have the Bible as their source book. And so if you do a search on the word heaven in the Bible, concordance could come up with every mention of heaven, and it's pretty sparse. Like it's pretty, there's not a lot of verses on heaven. So theology teaches what's in the Bible, but theological books don't do interviews with people in heaven. Theological books deal about what the Bible says. And, if you wanted to find out about England, you wouldn't go to a textbook about England. You,
Yeah,
you'd interview people who live in England, who
yeah,
experience England. And I I know England very well, and if you wanted me to show you through England, I'd be a good person. I was an older person, spent a lot of time in England, ruled with the Queen, and we knew about England. We opened a lot of the buildings. I know the history of buildings and architecture and all sorts of subjects there. Or would you trust? Would you trust a university textbook on the City of London? It may have some history in it, may have some interesting things, but if you wanted to be shown around England, you'd probably be better with someone who's lived in England for most of their life, not someone who's just lived in one house and went to one job on one train trip and didn't travel around and didn't do anything, had no interest. But you'd want someone who's got an interest in art and architecture and traveling and different things and different experiences. Uh, so yeah, so it's the trouble is with the Christian church. The trouble is with Christians is they trust theology over experience. They trust what the Bible says rather than active experience. And I've really enjoyed my time in England for a time in heaven, and for a time the Queen was the Queen of Heaven and she was opening buildings and stuff. So she'd be a really good person to ask about heaven, because she's opened some of the best buildings here and some of the best charities here and some of the best, ministries here. But yeah, so heaven's really delightful.
Thank you, Prince Philip. So, to reframe this chapter, heaven was never meant to be reduced to clouds, mansions, and stillness, or wherever you've been taught growing up. That was not the full picture, only fragments made simple. And when you begin to let go of the simplified version, it's going to challenge your assumptions, and sometimes you will doubt it. But that's the only way you can create space to see heaven for what it actually is: alive, structured, layered, and far more real than you were ever told. God bless.
God bless you.